Very good. Our first item is from Building and Planning, a discussion of the hearing examiner contract.
Good morning, Commissioners. Greta Holmstrom with Building and Planning. We talked last week in your regular meeting about the need to extend the hearing examiner contract. I had workshopped that with you earlier in December, and your verbal authorization was to extend it, so I had moved forward with that. I understand that's changed, and I've put together an RFQ so that that can go on your agenda for next week. But in the meantime, we do have some hearings that have already been scheduled, and so I'm hoping to talk about extending our current contract for a limited amount of time so that we can continue to move projects forward.
Just like on a case by case basis,
Right.
right? So you have one case that needs a hearing examiner.
Yeah, for example, I have one next week that's a Pacific Core project for the Saddle Dam that's already been scheduled for Thursday.
I'm okay with doing that on
Yeah.
a limited basis.
From what I remember, we were okay with a short period of time while you look for other options.
It's actually a curious thing because it's kind of the way we like to have these PSAs in some sense, which is on a non-exclusive basis. So the only thing I think we have to say is go ahead with the RFQs and make sure that we have choices in the near future, but in the nearest future,
Right.
Yeah.
I think you have to do what you have to do.
You have to get the work done, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So would you like me to extend it for 6 months or another period of time, or the year that we had originally proposed?
Oh, for this particular case that I think.
No, I think she's just saying in general until we find options.
Right. So the contract's not exclusive, so we could bring other hearing examiners on board based on the RFQ. But extending the contract for at least a few months would allow us to continue hearing cases until that time.
See, the only thing that bothers me about that, it puts a responsibility and a trust that you will do your best to bring some other hearings examiner on. If you say, yes, indeed, you will abide by that, then I would say a minimum of 3 months and maybe 6 months. But
I would be good at the 3 because I don't want to lose sight of it.
that's, yep.
Okay, I think 3 it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have facilities. A staff update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Savannah, Public Services. My staff update is to just let the board know that we have filled the Accounting Specialist 2 position. That position was vacated back in April by Jenny Spain. Since then, as you guys are aware, we've had some changes with facilities and purchasing coming over to Public Works. We took some time to identify the needs of that position. We had Tanya Richardson fill in for that position, working out of class and overtime to accommodate the accounts payable and receivable for that division. We did find the need to fill the position, and we did so with an internal candidate, Christine Miller. She comes from the Public Works Accounting Division as an office specialist. So this is a promotion for her to an Accounting Specialist 2. She's been cross-training with Tanya, and it's going very nicely. Good for her too, because she essentially could sit in the same position and back up our front counter. So just want to let you guys know that that was filled.
Great. Thank you. And is she out in your office now then instead of?
Yes, that's correct.
So the rest of the facilities guys are still over here? Okay. Super. That brings us to Public Works.
So good
Susan?
morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. I wanted to bring a couple items that you'll be seeing on your agenda next week. So next week, I will have a call for a hearing for adding 2 areas to our unmuffled compression brake zones. I've received 2 petitions from residents, one on China Garden and the other on Tower Road. And this just restricts the use of the unmuffled compression brakes, requires us to call a hearing. Currently, we have 5 zones. One of them being around Rose Valley Elementary School. There's one out on South Silver Lake. So these residents have requested unmuffled zones in their areas. So the process is, we'll call for the hearing next week and we'll hold the hearing January 31st to make that determination.
Good.
So the next item I have is good news, bad news. So as part of the infrastructure bill, there was a lot of money that was sent to the states, and the Washington State Association of Counties and the Association of Washington Cities lobbied hard for WashDOT to get additional funding to be directed towards the counties and cities. So they managed to do that for the Protect funds, which this is my new favorite acronym. Protecting resilient operations for transformative, effective, and cost-saving transportation. So that boils down to protect funds, and that goes towards culvert crossings. And the agreement between WASAC and AWC and the state was that the projects would be determined by the Brian Abbott Fish Barrier Removal Board. So they've shifted $25 million to the Brian Abbott Fish Barrier Removal Board that needs to be obligated by September 30th for construction projects. So if you've ever worked on a WashDOT project, 9 months is a big crunch. And the Brian Abbott Fish Barrier Removal Board found out about this late November. They decided the best way to put a call out for the first $25 million would be to go to their existing project list that they forwarded to the governor and ask what cities and counties would be willing to shift from state funding to federal funding. So they found $24.95 million worth of projects counties were willing to shift over and approve those projects. We said we would be willing to shift our Erick Creek project, which is out on Abernathy Creek Road, to this funding. So it's $3 million of funding with no local match is moving what we have been awarded. So what that causes us to do is that 6-year plan that we adopted beginning of December, we now have to amend because the funding is now federal, not state, and it's secured, not planned. So I'll be sending a call for hearing for an amended 6-year plan, and then we'll move forward with amending the 6-year plan if y'all want to accept the money. So it's 100% instead of Brian Abbott, where it's 85% state, 15% local. And they also let us increase our dollar amount because of the federal and the tight timeline.
Well, I know Erick Creek has been a long-standing project for quite a few years. It's out in an area where the traffic count isn't very high, so it hasn't ranked high enough to get funding. But so this is good news in terms of resolving that fish barrier.
Yes.
If only we couldn't have the same kind of good luck with Tower Road, the new Tower Road Bridge. Huh?
Yes. So.
Any questions? I've actually been up there and walked through. It's a beautiful site for spawning. It's just that it goes underneath Abernathy Creek and there's about a 12-foot drop from the culvert that's failing to the creek. And so there's no way the fish can make that jump. So they will after this.
Yes.
Any questions?
I'm only laughing because I'm thinking in many circumstances, the illogical solution comes up, says, well, we clearly have to get a special type of fish that can leap 6 to 12 feet,
Steroids.
and we'll fund a special program to do that, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, you know, this next subject sounds ominous. An accounting presentation. Oh.
It all adds up.
She didn't hear that.
Thanks. Good morning again. So Savannah Clement, Public Services. I have Tracy McDaniel. She's with Public Works as our business manager. I actually don't have a request laced into this presentation, so yay. It's more informational and kind of a reminder. Having a new commissioner on board, it's kind of helpful too, to give a little bit of background and context into what we have moving forward for this year. So that's my hope. What I'm going to go over though is specific to accounting and office, so administration over at Public Works. Back when we started, Mike and I back in 2017 as a team, we really wanted to concentrate on a few divisions, and accounting was one of them. Since I've been in the accounting division and overseeing it, we had a lot of opportunities to kind of tackle that low-hanging fruit. So looking at wastes, identifying them, trying to get rid of as much as possible and move towards efficiency. We've done that. Excuse me. With the exception of our antiquated software system. So currently, Public Works oversees several divisions. I have them listed. I won't go into too much detail. We employ, when all of our positions are filled, approximately 111 full-time employees. That also includes our recently acquired facilities and purchasing division. So it's a little bit greater than we had historically. We also manage several boards. You guys hear a lot about our Diking District boards. We have our Parks Board, Solid Waste Advisory, et cetera. With that comes a lot of administrative work, excuse me. We process approximately 4,000 lines of payroll every month. We also work on 500 accounts payable vouchers, AR invoices, several grants, anywhere from 10 to 20, depending on the year or how many weather events we've had. We also manage about 25 professional service contracts with an overall budget of 137 million. I will say that's a lot. It's inflated mainly because of our post-closure accounts for solid waste. So taking out those post-closure accounts, it's about 90 million overall funds. And to accomplish all that, we have several administrative staff. Within office and accounting, it's primarily 9 members. I also included purchasing and facilities because coming on board with us, they've also, taken on the role of processing for those divisions, excuse me. So those are our 9 employees up top that provide all of the administrative and accounting work that gets processed through our department. We can go forward, Kelly. A little bit of background on our software systems that we'd like to improve upon. We have multiple systems. You can see them listed here. Again, I'm not going to list them all out, but there's several. Anything with an asterisk is going to denote some kind of input or output process into yet another system. I wanted to highlight the Microsoft Access system. So the Access databases that we're using are a 2013 version. We import our time cards, process our payroll, utilize maintenance management. We also run our professional services and our RTA fleet database within Access. This is one of the primary reasons we're looking for a standalone software system, is to eliminate these processes here that you're seeing. I'll highlight FlexBill and CompuWay. They're standalone systems for water, sewer, and solid waste. They do not have any inputs or outputs that would necessitate changing those software systems. We can go to the next one, Kelly. Thanks. So with all that being said, I think many of you, at least 2 of you for sure, have heard about our project cost accounting requirements for Public Works. So if this is kind of redundant for you guys, I apologize, but you'll hear the word CRAB thrown around a lot at Public Works, and that's the County Road Administration Board. Susan speaks about CRAB quite often. And the accounting team is responsible for the finance and accounting reimbursements for CRAB. So essentially, the project costing activity requirements that we have are specific to roads primarily. And that is because it's considered a special revenue fund. So road money can only be spent on road activities, and you guys are well aware of that as well. And to do that, we have to be able to account for those costs. We also have multi-division required reporting, and then grant reporting is another element of project cost accounting. I won't go over all of the specifics of the CRAB requirements, but it is statutorily required by the state. And that is primarily what drives this project cost accounting and the complexities of it. I do the next. Just a summary, some of the main elements, of project costing for us as accounts payable, labor, material, and equipment. And the driving force of those costs come from our payroll, our time cards specifically. And we drill down even more so for CRAB reporting elements. So aside from those four main elements, we actually drill down to the milepost, work types. So think culverts, ditching, brushing, and then also state and federal classifications. So the FFC and TRC are only important in reporting, and essentially they just mean what type of route is it for trucking. Right, Susan?
So FFC is federal classification, so arterial collector, local. TRC is the truck route classifications. Aren't necessarily.
We did get those right. Yes. So those, again, they're only special for CRAB reporting purposes. We in accounting don't really use those as any other feature, but unfortunately we have to report on them. So we're good for the next. So quickly, our payroll process is extensive. It's something I've tried to again, that low hanging fruit, get rid of some of the redundancies. We have transitioned three, into direct keying into PeopleSoft, which is probably what you are used to and many county departments are used to, just putting their time in and clicking submit. Unfortunately, there's some divisions, roads specifically, that we couldn't get away with doing that. We get daily and biweekly time cards. And then also we have those divisions that key into PeopleSoft. What I'll go over next, and I'll really try to keep it at a high level. I'm passionate about this, so I tend to get in the weeds, but you guys you'll keep me in line. So what I'll get to now is the processing component. This is an example of a daily time card from our spray division. Again, the data is not super relevant for this presentation, but it's important to see the different categories of work activities, locations, mileposts, of course, what kind of time it is. We do these daily time cards for roads, spray, and sign. And again, this is important to project costing for grants and for our CRAB reporting requirements. Go to the next one, please. This is an example of our biweekly time card, which is for administrative staff and water sewer. This individual had coded their time to several different projects, which again, will tie back directly to grant reporting. So we would pull this person's times. Let's pick Ostrander Road culvert, and we would be able to surmise that time spent on that project and be able to get reimbursed for it based off of the information on her time card. This is what you would see in PeopleSoft. Again, most Cowlitz County employees aren't going to code their time to this level in PeopleSoft, but this is what it would look like for that spray time card, that daily time card I showed you. This is just a snapshot of totals of time. You can see the combo codes are pulled from our upload process. So that's going to identify by fund department bars, how we're coding that person's time. Okay, getting close. I know that's a lot of information, but I'm just summarizing it. Essentially, just overview, an employee would submit their time on paper to their supervisor, which would then get uploaded into Excel. When I say upload, I mean keyed. They're going to key that time into Excel. They're also going to audit it at that point. If there's any kind of rework, it's going to go back to the employee. At that point, assuming there's nothing to change, they'll submit it to our accounting division, who will then also review it for accuracy. If there's anything to redo, send it back. Assuming everything's great, they're going to push it through into our accounting specialist 3 position, which will then balance, re-audit, and then submit into the portal process, which is yet another electronic process that Patty Carroll helps us manage. This portal process essentially checks for errors, makes sure compost codes are correct, and then pushes it into PeopleSoft. Once it gets into PeopleSoft, it can also continue to have errors, we'll call them exceptions, overuse of vacation, comp sick, which in that case, we would also have to rebalance and reprocess. All right. So what we'd like to do, I've had 5 years now to really be involved in the payroll process, really understand the needs and the deficiencies. I'd like to eliminate the staff processing time that we have accumulated, which can be anywhere from, if you want to include all the time from the employee all the way up to the upload process days, it can take 48 hours depending on the rework. It's excessive. So I'd like to eliminate the errors in the rework process by integrating a software product that can check for those, and it's not subject to user error or manual error. I'd like to eliminate the outdated and unsupported software. So all those different softwares I listed, I think there was up to 7 in this process at one point, anywhere from 5 to 7. Get rid of the paper process. So all of our time cards are kept, which means they're subject to records requests. And because they're kept on paper, we also have to submit them for FEMA reimbursements. FEMA requires our paper copies if we have them. And because we have them, we have to go through boxes and boxes of these time cards to produce them. So eliminating that, there's that 5 to 2. I'd like to bring it down to 2, and I think we can do it with the research our team has done. And with the help of IT, that's what I'd like to eventually do. And in doing so, I think we'll increase that accountability, and not just accountability at the department level, but at the individual time reporting level, so that our individual staff are accountable for the time that they're entering in, are accountable for any errors or rework, and can actually correct those on their own. I think this, of course, will, sorry. Okay, it'll also increase efficiency, of course. And that transparency thing, I think that's just it's not just a good word to use. I think in this, it'll ring true. And I think from an auditing perspective, from our local auditor and their payroll team and our IT division and their team, because currently, unless you come over to Public Works and you are doing this process, which, can take 2 weeks from start to finish, there is not an understanding at the county level how this is done. And it would be amazing to be able to offer that, so that IT could come in and jump in and say, oh yeah, this is what's going on. The auditors could jump into our payroll process and know what's going on. And that's currently not the case. It's just so overly complex and antiquated. So that's that transparency, Mark. I just didn't want to throw that loosely. It's really important in this process. So just our progress in the next steps, I kind of talked about that low-hanging fruit already. And we also did go out to RFP in 2021 with the help of IT. Kim Hort was essential in that process. What we did was we said, okay, we've got PeopleSoft's project costing module. We paid for it. We have it. It's not up and running. What would it take to get there? And so we went out and asked, and this is what we got. We got 3 responsible responses. And it was anywhere from 380 to 875. And that 875 scope, of course, is extremely high, which included add-ons. We weren't willing to do that. So we did some more research. We came back as a team. We actually asked for, and you did approve as a board, our 2022 request for a public works software not to exceed 125,000. And then we actually came back this year to increase that to 175 with potential CPI increases, trying to adjust for those increased inflation costs. So with that being said, the board will see likely a RFP going out soon. Actually this month, hopefully, for a public works accounting software solution standalone. And I'm really passionate about it, so I talk a lot about it. But I've been there for the past 5 years, and I know that this is the right direction that we want to go. And I have Kim's been very supportive, and I think we can get there as a group. Do you guys have any questions? It's a lot of information dumped on you.
So how much staff time do you estimate is unnecessary? I mean, the ultimate goal is to eliminate a lot of these processes. So that's got to translate into
Half. I
staffing.
would say half of some of our administrative processing time. And I would say mainly with, I can break it up into divisions. So supervisors' time processing, time cards, and then also our accounting time, which is separate from their time, and how much time they actually spend processing. We have one individual who has several other duties, but she mainly is devoted to the shop time cards that we get daily. And then when we don't get them daily, they're batching them weekly, which is, even more condensed work on that individual. Her time could definitely be spent much more wisely. She's a very productive employee, and I think that, we could task her with additional duties that we could get a lot more done.
I think the answer should be far simpler than what you gave. It should just be how many dollars per unit of time, say a month or a year.
I don't have that. I could throw it though at that staff person specifically hourly, or let's make it easier, like you said, yearly. I would say anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 of just an individual staff time. Sean Rowe's on. He'll keep me in line if I'm wrong.
This really kind of unwraps the very complicated system that previous administrators had put in for Public Works that was impossible for them to explain to board members.
That's
At least
correct.
that's the way I felt. So, and of course, this will be taking advantage of the PeopleSoft decision that was pretty spendy to adopt,
Yes.
and for us not to be using it for our operations doesn't make sense either. So I applaud you on that. I do know that when you say that you're going out for an RFP, there's a dollar cost. What's your estimate? How much is it going to cost us to make this shift?
Oh, doing the research that we've done with the vendors that are out there, which they're minimal, for what we need. We were estimating at 175,000
Okay, that was
upfront cost.
That was the 175.
But I'll add that there is a yearly maintenance after that of approximately 9,000 to 12,000, depending on what modules we choose within programs.
I would imagine for a department that has about $11 million ending fund balance, you can afford 10 grand a year. So
I hope
I'm
so.
not worried about that. Gentlemen?
Thoughts running through my head. These things get convoluted because you have a system and you need a Band-Aid to fix something to it. And then you end up like where we're at now. And I think it's an overtime type thing. So my question is, and I don't know how much the PeopleSoft stuff costs us, but if you looked at any, a lot of business doesn't even do payroll. They use a third party
Mhm.
vendor,
Mhm.
and they have, a small staff that manages that relationship. Do we ever consider that or?
We, our Diking district, we actually do use a third party to process their separate payroll. We hadn't looked at that as an option, at least at Public Works. I don't know if that's like more of an elected official auditor decision to give us that direction to be able to do that. I'm not
I got
sure.
you. It just, I see this one contract from 2013, well, these people sunset those things and do
Mm,
that. So when you have software, you're always in the process of updating it. And I don't know if there would even be any cost advantage to a third party, but then they take care of making sure their software is up to date. You're just kind of managing the process. I'm not telling you I'm married to go that way. I'm just wondering if we've even given that a thought.
Yeah, I think it, for our Diking district purposes, it does work for them because their payroll is so simplified. And as you mentioned, we at the county level have created a very complex system, and we did so because of our complex reporting requirements. We could look at it as where, like you said, we control the process. The output would be a third party maybe, so the output would just be
Yeah.
processing those paychecks. Things of that nature.
It sounds like we paid for this PeopleSoft system, which is probably a good amount of money, and it does a lot of things that we're not utilizing at this point in time. So we're trying to figure out how to utilize that better.
Yeah, I say, we bought the Cadillac and we needed like a Chevy S10, right? So
So we got a lot of room to grow in that, and that's what we're trying to do here.
well, with this one, we looked at that, and that's what we did when we went out in 2021 to see, hey, what's the cost by utilizing existing software? And the cost was just, as you could see,
got you.
extremely high. And I just didn't feel, from an administrative point of view, that even if we did spend that money, that we would necessarily get what we needed to get from the software system, just based off of my own use.
I got a little bit confused here through reference to Chevy. I could have sworn the shop was Ford.
My first car was a Chevy S10, so I always go there, and it was
Well, I'm
quite
in
the
no
spectacle.
disagreement. I think this system looks pretty inefficient and complicated and probably open for error. So we need to, whichever way you go. And if we have this Cadillac system that's sitting there and we're just using this little bit of it, we need to figure out how to do better with that.
Well, I think it's telling that you are confronted with pretty arcane reporting requirements. If you've got the paper, you got to report. Yeah, got to get a copy of them. But if you don't use paper, they don't want it.
Right. And we actually give them both because it's so much easier for us to run an electronic report and send that to them. And, just for auditing purposes, because we have it, we have to
Yeah.
supply it,
But this is the right direction to go, though, so we don't need to.
I
do
think
both.
so.
All right. Questions?
Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit with this. For one thing, the numbers don't seem to add up.
Okay.
If the complexity and inefficiency of the moment is costing us 15 to 20K a year, I'm sure we probably haven't factored in errors and things like that. But
Sure.
even at that, when you're starting out up front saying it's going to cost you another 175K plus the annual maintenance, I'm saying the payback period is way out there in eternity, and so that's not the right way really to look at this.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I was shooting from the hip on one employee's staff time, not overall. So I think that it might be better to provide better numbers for you, to help you understand a little bit, and maybe it'll go the other direction and you disagree, but at least it'll be a better set of numbers to give you for this decision.
Yeah.
I think that
some more work should be done there.
Yeah, especially on like the return on investment for the cost savings.
And then there are some, if I understand correctly, a lot of this complexity is driven by the agencies which the CRAB and the FEMA.
That's
and
correct.
all that. But then it goes back to what my colleague said. One of the reasons we got PeopleSoft is for the notion that we could program it.
Mhm.
And for some reason or other, historically, I guess Public Works was doing its own thing. But in any event, now we have a choice of continuing to add separate software,
Mhm.
and I could make an argument for it or against it. But that just means it's hard for me to know if we're on the right track.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we adapt our PeopleSoft to handling your requirements?
Just so I understand, was your question, why wouldn't we, or why would we?
Why would we not?
Why would we not? Great
Mm.
question.
Yeah,
So aside from the costs, we've found, and hope maybe Kim Hort's online. I invited her, but I'm not sure she's on. One of the main items that it cannot do from what we've tried to make it do, which it is PeopleSoft, is capture equipment rents.
is
So
to what? I'm sorry.
Equipment rent costs. So one of those, on my presentation, some of the main elements is the AP costs and labor costs. Equipment rents is tied into that. And so in order to effectively cost on any project, whether it's for CRAB, FEMA, WashDOT, whoever, we have to include the element of equipment rate costs. So every time a road crew person goes out and uses a piece of equipment, they're going to charge back that piece of equipment and we get reimbursed for whatever, or maybe we don't get reimbursed, but from a granting agency. We're not able to integrate that into PeopleSoft project costing module, to my knowledge. And that is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle in order to effectively cost. So it's a big barrier aside from cost. We couldn't get there.
Let me ask it from a different way then also. It sounds like we've got Public Works business model is different than the business model of the rest of the county in general.
Yes.
Do we have a well-defined interface? What is it that we need from each other? Or another way of asking that is, why doesn't Public Works do its own thing and the only interface is going to have to be through an auditor's thing, and then everything else, you do payroll by hiring people if you need to, services. In other words, why are we struggling to get together if in fact you're saying we can't?
So hopefully I understood your point. We plan on, yes, having this standalone, we'll call it standalone. We have two other standalone models that have worked really well for the last decade, which is our water, sewer, and our solid waste. They don't integrate with PeopleSoft though. We would want this standalone to integrate into PeopleSoft at the summary level. So just at data push level. And that is the auditor's current system of control. That is our, our enterprise system. So that's the plan, is that would remain in control. That would remain our payroll. We would submit all of our data into PeopleSoft so that it's still under the control of the auditor. So it's not so much standalone to where it's completely isolated from county programs. It would integrate into PeopleSoft.
See, that should be totally doable, but it should be totally electronic and automatic.
Yes, correct.
Then the next question is going to tie into other counties have similar problems.
Yes,
Or do they?
they do. All Washington counties are subject to these CRAB reporting guidelines, and they, I would say, I think 3/4, if not more, utilize one system to do so. And that's the system that we think will be the most responsive.
And that's the one you're thinking is about 175K plus
Yes,
10K
yes, per year
for
maintenance. Yes.
Okay, and then on the last slide or the penultimate slide, the one before questions, you had 2 items on there at the end. I don't recall enough detail there, but I was a little confused as to what is it that we approved and did we go through with that and now we're throwing it away?
No, all I was saying was the board approved a software purchase back in the 2021 year for the 2022 budget. So the board did approve that already, but because it's been, I would call it stale and it's been a while and you've had a lot in front of you, I just wanted to make sure that you guys were still aware. So this isn't an updated request. It's just to let you know this had been approved and we're working towards moving forward a solution.
Okay, so we did not buy a solution. And now
No,
we're trying to buy
no.
another one.
Just, it's been budgeted.
Okay. What's the time pressure you're under?
3 years ago.
3 years?
I mean, yesterday, we've come up with, some barriers. We're working through those, and then hopefully this last one is just this request for proposals process. So timeframe wise, I'd like to get that out in a month. I'd love to have, just because I don't know, naive, impulsive, I don't know, but I'd love to have something going this summer, integration wise, something started this summer to move forward.
Okay, and your dependency on access would go away under the new
Yes.
system. Access is currently roughly unsupported,
Correct. Yes,
and it's been unsupported for,
couple of years.
yeah. And what's your front end to that? Is that Excel or you've got your own application?
So it's an access application for several of our processes, whether it be receipting, I guess our main integration is an Excel and then just an access front page integration, which is just like a receipting template. So sorry, I made that.
So
more
when you're going
complex.
out for the RFP, are you trying to emulate that in detail or just, okay, that's the
No.
right answer.
Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. Well, I think we go on to the next thing, the next item, which is a request for an executive session
Well,
tomorrow afternoon. Is that right?
Just a second on that. I assume you wanted some of the feedback here as to,
Yes.
am I free to go ahead?
Yes, and it was just, coming to the board 3 months from now saying, oh, by the way, here's this software. It's just, the timeframe's gone stale and I wanted to make sure it's still relevant.
I deeply appreciate that, and that's the right thing to do, and I'm okay.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Moss, Public Service Director. I believe we already have a 1:30 scheduled tomorrow for executive session. We're hoping to add on to that the tort claim that we received last week. We'd like to discuss that in executive session also tomorrow since there's potential litigation.
Okay. So instead of 5 minutes, it'll be 25?
Yes, correct. If not longer. I believe Susan and Patrick Harbison will be joining us tomorrow to talk about that tort claim.
Oh, so that will add more?
Add more.
Okay.
Sorry. And was it scheduled right at 1:30 for the first one? Okay.
We'll start with the executive session?
Yeah, I believe there's an attorney that's going to be on site tomorrow.
Yeah, I believe you requested to start at 1:30.
We're gonna have the executive right at 1:30. So, okay, so that's a little bit of a change. All right. We'll announce the change in the agenda and go into the executive session. Okay.
And on the miscellaneous side, we had a few road closures already this morning, including Rose Valley Road. We had some high winds on the south end of the county this morning that closed a few of our roads, mainly due to power lines being across the roadways. So
Oh,
staff is working on that. Rose Valley might be closed for majority of the day. So we have that information on our Facebook page.
How far down?
Very close, very, I don't know what milepost that is, but right past the, where it
Old-
starts at the,
Old Pacific Highway?
near the park and ride and the recycle center.
Ooh. An awful lot of people depend on that road, don't they?
Yeah, they have a bypass on Fish Pond right now.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
can't you have them in somebody else's district?
Your mind reader, I was saying, just if it's far enough, it's his district.
Considering that we've had a lot of sloppy weather, we've gotten by very nicely so far. So far, so good.
Correct.
I did get,
Considering that we're just about at the 1-year anniversary of Tower Road.
Yes, that's correct.
so the temporary bridge is in there and not everything's fine?
Correct. Yeah, it opened up, but 2 weekends ago. So yeah. They did some patching.
I actually, turns out I have a meeting every Wednesday of residents up there. They keep me well informed. And I said, so are you glad about the temporary bridge? And they said, yeah, but the potholes are killing us. So apparently there's some gap between the bridge.
Yeah,
and
we've
the-
cold patched that last week from when the contractor was done, there was a few patching areas that we needed right around the bridge there. Yeah. And usually this time of year might have a few more pop up from the pit itself, Stordal's pit to Spirit Lake Highway that we keep running through there. There were so many trucks on that road that were constantly
Yeah,
Yeah,
fixing things on that road.
pushing it.
yeah.
Okay, understandable. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
Don't think so.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anything else to be brought to our attention? Seeing no hands raised?
There's, isn't anything online.
Nope. All right. I guess we are adjourned. Thank you very much.